So, I'm going to talk about the painting Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, created by Castor David Fredericks during the 1880s. First, I will talk about perspectives, and then I will go on to explain how different perspectives or how different information given to the reader can cause changes in what the reader perceives in the painting. So first, let's start with the definition of perspectives. According to the Oxford Learning Dictionary, perspective refers to the different attitudes towards an idea or concept, and can be caused by a person's personality, surrounding, culture, point of view, etc. Perspectives can change as the person viewing the piece of art, a photo, or a text changes. A quote by the artist Andy Warhol goes, "Everything has its beauty, but not everyone sees it. But not everyone sees it." This refers to his and other paintings or works of art that have their own meaning behind them. These meanings can be visualized differently depending on the perspective that it is being looked at. However, some people cannot see the beauty that is presented before them. This quote has relevance when digging into the topic of the ideological eye of the beholder. This is because there are many different types of people with different backgrounds. A painting made by Nazis in World War II may be viewed differently depending on whether it is a Jew that was looking at the painting or if it were a Nazi to be looking at the painting. Different meanings will be acquired from the same painting based off of just the change in their beliefs. Time also has a huge effect and change on the painting. For example, the current painting that we'll be talking about, Wanderer Above the Sea of Fog, there includes a historical meaning as well as meanings that don't have to do with history at all. Um, History plays a role in the perspective of the viewer as um, as time goes on, the meaning changes with the different mindsets of the viewer. This shows that art is subjective, as when the viewer of the piece changes, the value and the meaning of the art changes as well. What art is to one person may not be the same as it is to another person, and what is worth nothing to someone may be priceless to another. The meaning behind Frederick's painting, Wander Above the Sea, can be interpreted in many different ways, as the perspective of the viewer changes as the perspective of the viewer will change depending on the background of that viewer. According to Elaine Hahn, um, a Dominican Academy and Sarah Lawrence College graduate in um, in politics. Oh no, not in politics, in art. Um, when first looking at the painting, nothing will really stand out too much, as there is no defined colors. However, as you start to look at the picture for longer and analyze what is actually happening in the art, the painting will start to draw you in and allows different meanings to be pulled from the same piece of paper based off of different people's personalities and backgrounds. Michael Zuraskini, a modern art enthusiast, comments that the art could have political meanings or relations to a political statement. The picture holds a man on the mountaintop, um, with a body of mist covering the landscape, with only the occasional mountain being visible. The man wears a uniform worn by students as well as other people during the time of Germany's wars of liberation. However, at the time of releasing this painting in 1818, the uniform had already been banned in Germany. And by depicting this uniform in the painting, um, people could start to view this as the author of this painting going against the government. However, this is the more historical view on the meaning of the poem. No, not the poem, the painting. According to Darren Anderson, this painting is a reflection of humanity, and it depicts immense, the immensity of nature and, and mankind, and it shows mankind's want to conquer this, the everlasting want for power that humans possess, and the limitless possibilities. Mankind's ability to reach and strive for bigger and better things, and the vastness before him is a metaphor for that limitless. When a student or the viewer is given more background information on the poem, the meaning of that poem on the painting, the meaning of that painting actually changes to them. As someone with no background knowledge uh, may not really be able to forge a strong meaning for the painting. When someone with no background to this painting discovers that the artist's brother had actually died while trying to save him from drowning, the then it actually emphasizes the loneliness that is contained in the painting, and it sort of paints this image in the viewer's head that this is possibly a person who has lost his way, or maybe the fog symbolizes how his path has been covered and is no longer clear what he wants to do, as he now feels alone without his brother, and um, he feels like he doesn't know what to do. He feels like he doesn't know which direction he should go in anymore. If the mm, if the viewer is told about how the piece had inspired the Romantic movement, it once again alters the meaning of this painting, allowing the person to understand the artistic value of this painting. One of the major, some of the major things that had changed with art during the Romantic movement is the focus on the emotions and the inner world of the writer or narrator, the celebration of beauty, nature, and imagination, and the rejection of social convention, rationalism, industrialism, and organized religion. This will cause the viewers to of the art to uh, think that the art is possibly going against the government or the changes that were happening in the government back then, which would be correct. As I stated earlier, the political meaning of this was how the clothes were sort of symbolized the defiance of the government, as the clothes were banned. However, the clothes were banned to be worn back then. However, he included them in his painting, and it shows and symbolizes the defiance of the painter to follow the changes that were occurring in the economy back then. He showed this by including a small detail such as a uniform of the lone person standing on the cliff, which shows that no small detail can actually be overlooked uh, when looking at a painting such as this, and every small detail may actually allude to a significant cause or a significant meaning, or may have a significant meaning behind it. Um, this art was also considered to be inspiration for the Nazis, as the Nazis claimed Fredrickson to be their ideological ancestor in 1930. This changes the entire meaning of the person standing alone on the cliff, as the reason for this is and the reason Nazism has such a huge effect on the painting, or this painting having relations to Nazism, is um, basically because of Hitler's idea of the Aryan race, or the superior race. Um, Even though the picture does not include the eye, from the back, the viewer can depict this man that fits the criteria that Hitler had set out for people, um, which were basically people who had a light skin tone or white skin tones, people with blonde hair, blue eyes, um, mainly these European people were considered to be this Aryan race, or this superior race that Hitler had decided on. This can this can cause an uneasy feeling for the audience and changes the tone of the painting as a whole. And it actually back then it actually just sort of destroyed his reputation to be connected with Nazis, as students back then had ultimately refused to work with his paintings, as they believed working with his paintings would associate them with Nazism as well. And back then, students didn't want to be associated with Nazism. This uh, continued until the early 1950s, which ultimately damaged his career gravely. Um, However, if viewed in another context, such as how this painting can be viewed as how Hitler's ego ultimately caused his downfall, it changes the entire meaning and goes completely against what the Nazis had said, and how the Nazis said that this had inspired them. As this painting can be easily seen as Hitler's ego sort of causing his downfall. This is because the image depicts a man standing um, sort of against the world, and against the ideology of the majority of the world. And this could symbolize how Hitler had these masterful ideas about how he was going to sort of allow the Aryan race to strive in his new world, or his new imagined world that he was creating. So, Hitler was a man with huge ambitions, huge ideas, and he's he was really an independent person, as he didn't really rely much on others. He relied on the power and the force of his army, but he himself was the main thing that he relied on: his own ability, his own strategies, and his own wits. So that sort of depicts him going against like the entirety of the world, his own images and ideology against the world, and it can be represented in this picture as this picture depicts a man who stands on the mountaintop all by himself, going against the world, or looking out at the world, which could um, which could be, as I said earlier, it is a reflection of humanity, and how humanity um, continues to strive for growth, and continues to strive for conquering new lands, and ultimately making humanity better. However, in this case, when looking at Hitler as an individual, Um, the person standing by himself no longer represents humanity, but only represents Hitler. And that could cause this view on how Hitler actually had plans set out to conquering the world, and how he believed that um, himself he could conquer and take and he could conquer and sort of control the world and create this Aryan race. And this depicts his downfall as he was incapable of doing that, and his large ego of conquering the world actually caused him to lose everything in the end.